Hey guys, Butts here. Today I want to talk about some cool tech or interactions that I feel like are either underutilized or maybe unknown about. So let's get right into it. Very recently I did a 2 watch turn run built entirely around Unleash. What that means is I was using Unleash along with multiple copies of the same skill. You would think that they would gain seals at the same time, but they actually gain seals independently of each other. So what that means is you can like put curses on an enemy, do some single target stuff, and then go 1, 2, or technically 3. Um, and I know what you're thinking, that doesn't sound particularly strong. However, early league, when you don't have a ton of cast speed and you don't have a ton of defenses, you're not usually standing here and attacking dangerous enemies. You're usually hitting them and then running. So you can do this, this, and then keep on moving. This is particularly strong if you have a support gem that is worth way more than your other support gems, like buffed Archmage is a good example. So just something to consider. You can potentially turn your 5 link into a 4 link for more damage early on if you're playing like an Unleashed spellcaster, probably most likely like some kind of Archmage build. And if you're wondering, like a side note, if you're wondering why I didn't upload a video on this build, it's because 2024 self-cast Arc on bad SSF gear is not very strong. I struggled to kill bosses, and the clear was okay, but the damage was not there. It was supposed to be Cracking Lance, a branching build, but 5 disintegrations from lab later, I gave up and just stuck with Arc. All right, so moving on, I want to talk about shotgun interactions with Tornado. This is the real original Tornado gem. So I think the best example of this is Lightning Arrow, because anytime Lightning Arrow hits an enemy, it will then create AoEs that target other enemies. So if the Tornado is remotely close to an enemy, it will hit, the arrow itself will hit the enemy, and then an arrow hit the Tornado, which will then create an AoE that will hit the same enemy. So creating 2 pretty easy hits. This one you can set up, since it's a bow, with Mana Forge Cast on Crit Tornado Life Tap, or something like Azanas, where you trigger a Tornado every time you attack. You do also need to be relatively close to the boss, but it's not as demanding as, or like close as something like Elemental Hit, because Elemental Hit's AoE is very small. So you do kind of need to be directly inside the boss's hitbox to make this happen. As you have more AoE, I assume that's not the case, but default AoE on Elemental Hit's pretty small. The newer one's a little bit bigger, even without elemental ailments, so that might be a little bit easier. And then moving on to one that's a little weirder that I think is a little less known, Ice Shot. Ice Shots is not as clean. See, as you can see, that was only 1 hit because the Tornado was in front of the boss. Now, if the Tornado is in front of you, it will hit the Tornado, and then it will create an AoE cone behind the Tornado that hits the enemy behind it. So you can get a double hit that way, but it is a little bit trickier and it's not going to be as consistent. I'm curious to see how that works out with the new Ice Shot. Now this one is really weird because projectiles with an AoE component, you would think could not do this, but this is Fireball with 5 projectiles, and as you can see, there's only 3 firing off because I have no pierce, no chain, no fork. So the projectiles, when Fireball projectiles end, they explode. So 1 explodes off of the Tornado directly on top of the boss, hitting it, and then one of the projectiles actually hits the boss, so you get two hits. I'm spell slinging the Tornado here. This one is weird, and I don't know if it's exactly as playable because, like, you know, using a skill like that without any source of pierce, chain, or fork is not going to be ideal, but it is a lot of damage, so that's why I'm sharing it. Yeah, so moving on, the next thing I want to talk about is Flash Charge on Crit, and in particular sustaining fully sustaining 1 to 2 Flask in single target scenarios on non-Pathfinders. Like, this is a Deadeye, and as you can see, I'm fully sustaining this Granite Flask because while this mod has a 0.1 millisecond cooldown, I'm critting so frequently that I'm always meeting that 0.1 second cooldown, so the Flask will always be up. And then if you take 3 points on the tree for like 45% Flash charges gained, either like the ones I just took or the one by Mind Over Matter, you should be able to fully sustain another 20 Flash charge Flask fully on bosses. As you can see, this Diamond Flask now also is always up. So something really powerful to consider if you're a build that crits very frequently or creates a ton of small hits in its projectile base, like something like Molten Strike, Ball Lightning, etc. There's a ton of examples that this works with. Moving on, the next thing I want to talk about is Sigil of Power, particularly in attack builds. The reason I want to talk about Sigil of Power is because if you can spend and leech between 3 to 400 mana per second. You're going to get about 2.3 or 2 flat added lightning damage worth of wraths, which is a ton of damage. Like in this showcase I'm doing here is about, I think, 40 to 50% more damage. So clearly very powerful. Not a ton of builds can meet this requirement. Generally, builds that are going to be triggering a lot of spells, like Cast on Crit, or triggering a ton of attacks, like Mana Forge builds, or weirdo skills that just happen to have a really high mana cost, like Wild Strike of Extremes. But if you're a build that has like between like 1400 to 1500 mana, and you get your normal amount of mana leech, that should be about 300 mana leech per second. So it would mean that you could sustain Sigil of Power if you can spend enough mana to actually make that happen. Moving on, the next thing I'm going to talk about is Comb Spirit alongside Time of Need on Guardian. I seen this a little bit more popular before Comb Spirit was nerfed from 300 to 100 life per second. But long story short, if you have Time of Need and you have about 5,000 life, you're going to regenerate about 20 rage every 4 seconds. It's going to be a little bit more if you have this cluster over here. And then if you take this mastery, it means that you don't actually fully lose all of your life regen. It's just going to still happen every 4 seconds, like instantly like that. And then you will still keep your rage uptime. Now, the rage uptime on like a setup like this is going to be probably about, looks like it should be on about 10 seconds, off every 5 seconds. So you'll have Berserk up about 2/3 of the time, which is very powerful because Berserk's a ton of damage and a ton of speed. It'll be more prevalent, I think, in this league, or more easy to maintain because you're going to be able to have Enduring Cry on more builds, and you're going to have be able to have Berserk with automation. So you don't actually have to click this button. It'll just do it when it's off cooldown. And so this last one I was a little hesitant to include because I think it is a bug, but I did plan on making a league starter around it a few leagues ago where I was a Chieftain LE hit, getting double hits off Spellslinger plus Tornado, and then I was taking Chieftain's Tao's Chosen node to get clones when you attack with a ranged strike skill. See, as you can tell, it also works with Barrage. Yeah. Very cool. Well, like I said, probably a bug. I think that's it for all the interactions I wanted to share with you guys. Thanks for stopping by. See ya.